It's real. It's raw. At times, it's real raw.
A lot of things that are easily correctable.
This is your Was Carole King Wrong? Leader Fan Radio Network.
Okay.
And KFAN.com. 1 minute, 23 seconds past the hour of 3 o'clock Central Standard Time. Welcome back. It's the bumper-to-bumper afternoon aardvark midweek on a, still to me, rather brisk late February afternoon here in the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul. Guardsy produces the show. My name is Dan Barreiro, former Ink Stain Wretch, newspaper of the Twin Cities. And we are delighted to be a part of your afternoon as long as you can stomach us. Sometimes that's a minute. Sometimes that's the entire 3.5 hours. That's entirely up to you. It's the beauty of radio. You are not forced to listen to any of it. It is not a requirement. It is not an obligation. It can be a commitment, but the assumption is if you're committed to it, it's because you want to be. Not that anybody, well, I guess captive audience in a car.
We get that a lot at the state fair.
We do get that, yeah. Kids are stuck in the car.
But we usually
Dad wants to watch it. What do we do?
We usually Stockholm Syndrome them by the end. How many times
they're on board? Yeah.
The wives in particular will say, yeah, he used to listen and I'd listen under duress, but I got to say, you guys grow on me.
Is that called Stockholm Syndrome?
I think so. Something like that.
Something like
Closest
that. You're right.
thing.
Well, whatever works for you. We will be here until 6:30 tonight. We have three outstanding guests, including one from the Combine for the second consecutive day. We will have a Combine presence on the program. Alec Lewis is scheduled to join us at 4:30 this evening. And if you were playing the drinking game while the Paul Allen Project chatted with acting general manager Rob Brzezinski and took a drink every time he used the word alignment,
no,
you are in the tank. You're probably sleeping.
You're passed out.
You're probably sleeping it off. It's astonishing. Here, I think of Brzezinski as been around forever.
Old school guy.
Go all the way back. He laid out his roots, who he's connected with, legendary names in the sport, including Don Shula. And I'm thinking, well, the one thing we're not going to have to worry about anymore is the word salad. We're not going to have to worry about the pretty expressions that have become with it and wow in the National Football League, especially at TCO Performance Center. And I got to tell you, if we keep records for this, I believe he shattered the all-time mark for alignment. In other words,
wow. I
don't think in any quasi presser he could touch the number of times alignment was uttered during the Paul Allen Project with Rob Brzezinski.
I'm down about that now.
Yeah, I'm not happy about it.
I didn't hear it. I agree. I thought he was cut from a different cloth.
Now, he did say one thing that resonated with me. You could say it's stating the obvious, but every once in a while at this organization, the obvious needs to be stated. I'm paraphrasing. I believe teams are built through the NFL draft. And again, you could say, well, yeah, alert the media, Lindbergh, baby. But
thank you.
I think he's trying to make a point that clearly we have fallen by the wayside in that regard in recent years, and you can't make up for it. No matter how aggressive and ambitious you are in free agency, sooner or later, it will catch up to you. And there was a lot of discussion about the quarterback position. I would summarize what Brzezinski had to say about J.J. McCarthy as give the kid a break, too much heat, not giving him a chance, some it's unfair. You got to give him more than a minute. The question on the table is, how many minutes? How many minutes are enough minutes when it comes to this new administration? And is it possible that Carole King, the legendary songwriter, I believe one of Chris Hines' favorites,
yes,
was wrong when she sang, and it's her greatest tune, as far as I'm concerned, a massive hit back in the day. It's a song called It's Too Late.
I wondered if that's where you were going.
As in, we really did try to make it. Something's wrong, goes on and on from there. But when it comes to a certain quarterback, is it possible Carole King was wrong? Is it possible it's not too late? Many of us thought it was.
Is it possible we'll feel the earth move?
Is it possible we will feel the earth move? Well, I'm just throwing this out here because Guardsy brought it to my attention. One of the most plugged-in reporters in the National Football League, Adam Schefter. Was this earlier today? Or was this yesterday?
I believe this was yesterday.
Yesterday with an individual whose name I can't remember.
I can't either, but it's from the Adam Schefter podcast.
Let's listen to what he has to say about a certain quarterback with which many of us are very familiar.
What do you make of Rodgers' future today?
The belief around the league, and let's preface it by saying it's Aaron Rodgers, and so there are never any absolutes, and things could change like that. But the belief around the league is that the feeling is he's supposed to give an answer by mid-March. Many people thought that there was no chance he'd be back. It certainly sounds like it is an absolute consideration, and it sounds like, and again, it's Aaron Rodgers, so you never fully know, sounds like he's more likely than not to be back today. I think the feeling is he
back
could be
where?
Back with the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Oh.
If we go back to last year,
when
he wanted to play in Minnesota.
I was going to say, is it Steelers or nobody else? And if it's somebody else, I remember the flirtation with Minnesota, and they are certainly looking for competition with J.J. McCarthy.
That's the interesting one to me, right? Like, I don't know how Aaron Rodgers feels, and I don't know exactly how the Vikings feel, and they didn't want to do that last year because I think they were being protective of J.J. McCarthy.
But
do they still feel the same way, or is Aaron Rodgers more in the conversation? So, again, with the man of mystery, there are some real mysteries here as to exactly when he's going to announce what he's doing, whether he is or isn't coming back. Feeling is, he'll be back. Feeling is, should be mid-March. Feeling is, it should be Pittsburgh. Now, that means he could retire tomorrow or could wind up playing with the Vikings in the spring. We don't really know exactly. I'm just telling you the general gist of what's being said out there right now.
Huh.
Tweet that.
Maybe it's not too late. Although I dare say there are people out there saying, I hope it is too late. Because it is too late to want to be interested in Aaron Rodgers because he's done. There's people who believe that. It's a defensible position. But is it too late, baby, for the flirtation to turn into something more significant between Aaron Rodgers and the Vikings? I actually believe that the change in the general manager's chair makes it more likely that something could be happening because he's fresh to the mix. And who knows where he is. And we already know, quite frankly, that the Vikings clearly have given indications that they're going to be less concerned this year about hurting J.J. McCarthy's feelings. That, to me, has come through so far rather, I would say, loud and clear. The quote from Brzezinski that's getting some attention from yesterday. We examined very closely what KOC had to say, not so much Brzezinski. Yesterday, to the Jackals, what we do know is we need a level of baseline quarterback play for us to be effective. Now, what does that tell you? Well, that we didn't get a level of baseline quarterback play that we needed to give us a chance a year ago. He tries to let JJ off the hook a little bit. Unfortunate situation for JJ, some of the injuries and things he's dealt with, but we're going to explore, wait for it, every opportunity. We can't manufacture what's not there. So number one, where are the options? Is it reciprocal? Is it financially doable? A lot of factors that go into it. I'm telling you, I know I'm viewed as an A-Rod apologist, but I'd kick the tires again. I think all options for this upcoming season have to be on the table. And here's where I might offer up this non-negotiable position. Because you heard from Schefter, going to be earlier this year, maybe mid-March. My position is that should be a requirement from Rodgers. We're not going to milk this for months. First of all, we can't really afford to because we have to have a plan B.
Got to find somebody.
If you wake up in the darkness retreat or in the cave on July 1st and say, you know what, forget it. So I say, no. We need to know mid-March, whatever the threshold dates are, I want to know it. I want to know you're going to be here the entire offseason, working in the laboratory with KOC, the quarterback whisperer, and that you're going to be a constant presence, not just somebody who's going to blow in, a la Brett Favre, taking the plane, the private plane from Hattiesburg. How many years ago was that now?
15.
15 years
16.
ago. So I'm not here to start a fire, but I am here to say the Carole King song might not apply. It might not be, in this particular case, too late. A texter throws it out this way, and it is a good talker. For the same money, if you can get either of these two quarterbacks for the same money, knowing everything you know about where they are in life, Kirk Cousins or Aaron Rodgers?
I think I take Rodgers.
I would too.
I think I take Rodgers.
Now, is there a third option that I might like better than Rodgers? Probably, but you have to tell me who that is and how gettable that individual is.
And the money part of it matters, as we've talked about, because they somehow have financial problems, even though they weren't supposed to after the last couple of seasons. I would give the Rodgers thing a try. Why not? Because are they winning a Super Bowl with Kirko?
No.
Probably not, right?
And you can argue they're not going to win a Super Bowl with Rodgers either.
Right, and so it might just be...
Which is what allegedly they thought a year ago.
Yeah.
But how'd that work out for him?
And also, as Alec Lewis wrote a couple of months ago, or actually a couple of weeks ago when Kwesi was let go, the one NFL source or one source connected to the team's thinking saying, I still want to know whose idea it was to say no to Rodgers.
Yeah, you're right. I think we all do.
Because a lot of people were curious about it. Rodgers curious.
Because there are people who, after Kwesi was fired, tried to put it on that basis that the implication was Kwesi was more adamant about moving on and plugging in JJ than the head coach was. I've never believed that because I refuse to believe that the head coach wouldn't have been the most influential person in the room regarding the direction the team was intending to take for 2025. I don't buy it. There's plenty to hammer on the Kwesi regime in terms of the drafting and other things, but I don't think there's no way I think that he wouldn't defer to the whisperer. So I don't know. Is the whisperer feeling desperate enough?
Right.
To say,
right.
Bleep it.
I need a guy I can trust.
Let's do it. And hey, I'm stubborn. We'll figure it out. I mean, with Rodgers, you probably don't want to throw it 50 times at this point, right? He didn't throw it that much last year.
That was going to be my other part with it to you. It would force KOC to do what you've been talking about for 3 years.
But would it? It should.
I think it would.
You think at that point it's survival? I think
even Rodgers would go,
survival.
KO, I'm 43 years old, man. I can't sling it 50 times a game.
You going to tell me that you don't think... I wish we'd ask him this question. He probably wouldn't be able to answer it, honestly. But do you think if JJ, as in Justin Jefferson, is told, who would you like to catch passes from in 2026? Aaron Rodgers or Kirk Cousins? Or J.J. McCarthy? Probably the order would be, I'd like to think the order would be A-Rod 1, Cousins 2, J-Mac 3.
I think that is the order.
Yeah.
If you ask
And
me.
that doesn't even have to be an indictment on that J-Mac can never be a good quarterback. But based on where we are now, we'll see.
Bring gas.
Yeah, that's it. I don't know. Just asking. Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line is in rebellion right now. 64686. We'll come back and give you an outstanding guest lineup that includes guests on the 30s, as we like to say in the business, 3:30, 4:30, and 5:30. A brief pause now, and we'll get this ball rolling. I mentioned Alec Lewis will join from Indianapolis at 4:30 this afternoon. Kessler in studio 5:30. I'm sure he'll have much to say about the ho-hum State of the Union address last night that I think did set he broke his own record, I believe, for longest State of the Union speech. Kessler will have all that information, I'm sure. Other things that we'll get to with him. That's at 5:30. Lewis at 4:30. Our old friend Adam Minter, bottom of this hour. He's an author. We've had him on many times over the years, but it's been a while. He's also writes for Bloomberg. A lot of good sports stuff from him via Bloomberg.com. And he had a couple of interesting things regarding the Winter Olympics that I just can't get over, even several days, I should say, after the closing ceremonies. So we'll get to him, as I said, next segment. Lots of what's going to happen, writes 952 guy, when Rodgers overthrows JJ on a deep route and he starts yelling at JJ like it was his fault. Vikings fans might revolt. I think even A-Rod would be a little bit more careful.
I think he was this last year a little bit. He had a couple moments where he called guys out.
Yeah, but I think he is smart enough politically to know he's got to be a little bit more careful on Justin Jefferson. How far he goes there. Young JJ, old Kirk, or even older Rodgers, well, as Christian Leitner might say, loser, loser, loser. Whoa. That's from Chris. Kevin from Channy writes, good to know I'm not blocked. But with Rodgers or Cousins, JJ would have to go over the middle. That sounds like an accusation.
A shot at JJ?
A little bit, doesn't it?
He goes everywhere. Justin Jefferson's not afraid.
Clayton from Rochester. A-Rod in the friends and family tent. Open up the phone lines and let people vent. Last year we said no, but that's not what we meant. Wolves in 5. A-Rod would be, this is from 612 Gal, would be so incentivized to win here, being back in the NFC North. His offensive weapons here versus Pittsburgh, not even close. Oh, my God. And the stories with having him here, it would be epic. And Gerby would lose his you-know-what. Good text. All true. That sounds like somebody
that way and take it seriously.
who might have some newspaper and or radio or TV experience, because I'll admit it. I'm not going to lie. Part of what I would be rooting for is the story.
For sure.
Having a chance to gobble up the story day in and day out. And the beauty of it from a story standpoint is it can go good and be a hell of a story. It can go bad and in some ways might even be a better story. And I know Vikings fans don't want to think that way. They want to do something that they think can end well.
We need a good story.
But I think it's a good story. A conversation with PA also featured the line to the effect of, you draft a team, not players. Rodgers is not a team player. It's his team. Rodgers is not always a team player, but I think, again, desperate times occasionally call for desperate measures. This falls under the classification of, if it never happens, we're always going to wonder what might have been. And that doesn't mean automatically it's going to go good. But at least if you bring him in and it's a disaster, you can say, well, we checked the box. We found out. Otherwise, it was going to torture us. It's like Lindsey Vonn.
Right.
I mean, Lindsey Vonn, I'm sure, did not want to lose her leg by any stretch of the imagination, but it would have haunted her forever if she had just said, I'm done. I'm not going to go down that mountain one more time. We need to go down the mountain knowing, well, what would be the football equivalent of Lindsey Vonn almost losing her leg?
Oh, my God.
Would it be finishing like 6-11?
Yeah.
Or would it be
3-14?
Would it be that, or would it be good record and then we lose in our first playoff game with A-Rod throwing 3 picks?
I think it would be the former.
Yeah.
Because if you get back to the playoffs and you lose, at least you're in the playoffs. It's one game.
True.
It's weird.
That's true.
I can't accept not trying. That was the Michael Jordan quote. Remember, even in the last dance, Jordan, it still bugged him that they didn't get to come back for 7.
No, that's true. It's
30 years later.
That's where Krause cannot be forgiven. That's where the ripping on him is fair. Although the question on that was whether it was him or whether it was, for whatever reason, Jerry Reinsdorf. Which made no sense. But that I do get. Love those cuts. What do you think about Trey Lance, another first-round draft pick for KFC, might be dictated here, to work with? He's 6'4", 220 pounds, still young enough to take on the role for another 10 years. I don't know what to think of him. I was intrigued by him, coming like everybody, but at this point, that's one of those guys you got to do your due diligence on, or else it's another J.J. McCarthy situation. I don't know. He's been around longer.
He's moved teams.
Is Carson Wentz gone? My assumption is yes, but I don't know. Rodgers is absolutely toast. Did you actually watch him play last year? We saw it. We saw the good and the bad. But he was not surrounded by much.
No.
He did not have much going on around him at all.
Offensively in particular.
Yeah.
I worry about
and even at key moments, I didn't think their defense was as good as it had been made out to be.
That's true. I worry about the offensive line for the Vikings, obviously.
Yeah. That'll be remade.
Rodgers isn't a guy at this point who's going to be getting himself out of a lot of trouble. Like, I go back to the last couple of weeks of the season, their win-and-in game that they needed.
Yeah.
He was masterful.
He was magnificent. That was probably his best game of the season.
It probably was. Yeah. It felt vintage. And I was sitting, I don't know, Bloomington or Ann Arbor, I can't remember. I was in a hotel room on some Sunday night watching it going, this is why they brought him here. And again, they kind of limped into the playoffs and obviously didn't play well once they got there. And now Mike Tomlin's not the coach anymore, but I thought he was really good at times. And that's all you're really looking for, right? That was the theory
100%
about why JJ was going to be just plug and play this year, is because you're not looking for, you don't need Josh Allen right now. You don't need a Patrick Mahomes. You don't need it. That was the theory. Obviously, you didn't get anywhere near what you needed, but I'd be intrigued.
I was out on Rodgers last year, but he might be the perfect bridge if we still think JJ has a shot. Rodgers can try and make one more run. JJ can marinate a bit longer. It'd be fascinating to see how their egos mix. They would mix fine. Because McCarthy is smart enough to know that he can't lose his mind. He has no leverage. He has no equity at this point where he can say, well, I'm being disrespected. Or if he does, he'll lose, I think, that particular public relations war as well. Joe Burrow's name's coming up again. Well, yeah.
That, I think, is a pretty obvious one.
But that's going to be a little bit more expensive. You willing to give up Justin Jefferson to get him?
No.
Okay, well, I don't know if you're... But my guess is that's what Cincinnati would say.
Probably.
We want a package of draft picks and JJ. I don't know that.
I want an extra draft pick from what you want and Jordan Addison. That's what I would say.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that'd be enough.
It wouldn't be.
It'd be worth trying for sure. And he has to be okay with the possibility of not being the starter, right? No, you go in this one. There's no question who starts. Don't you think? I mean, Rodgers, even if you're concerned about how he has played the last couple of years, if you're committed to doing this, you have to accept the premise that he's coming in to be the starter. I can't imagine A-Rod raising his hand in camp, say, I got beat out. More than happy to be J.J. McCarthy's backup, and if he gets hurt, which he probably will, then I'll still have a chance to prove how wrong KOC was not to start me from the beginning of the season. I just don't see A-Rod playing nice in that situation. Do you?
No.
Oh, unlikely. Mm-mm. All right, let's get to our first guest, our old friend Adam Minter, with some good stuff he's written, Winter Olympics related, and maybe some other things before. Maybe we'll talk to him about the quarterback situation. That is our next segment. Adam Minter is next. Don't forget, we'll check in on the Combine with Alec Lewis from The Athletic about an hour from now. Kessler in studio on State of the Union stuff from last night and other things as well. He is scheduled for his usual time, 5:30. And we're now pleased to be joined by Bloomberg.com columnist Adam Minter, kind enough to join us now as well. Been a while since we've chatted. Guardsy reminds me you're back more local again. Is that correct?
I am. We, it dates back to COVID. That just started bringing us home more and more. And so here we are. I travel a bit, but glad to be back.
Well, it's good to chat with you once again. And the Olympics are in the rearview mirror, but I still think there's some time for some reflection, because one of the things that struck me that you wrote about that was kind of interesting, as I believe sort of symbolized by one competitor in particular, Alana Myers-Taylor, the 41-year-old mother who finally made it for gold via the monobob track, as they say in the business, is what at her age she might represent. Give our audience a little bit of why you thought it was worth writing about her and what door perhaps she represents.
Sure. Well, what I began to notice sort of slowly as I was watching the Olympics, binging the Olympics really, is that we seem to be seeing, and I just saw anecdotally really, seeing more and more athletes in their 30s and even in their 40s. And in fact, the first time I noticed it during these last Olympics was a snowcross competitor by the name of Nick Baumgartner, 44 years old, who took 7th in that event. And that's an event I usually associate with somebody in their 20s. And so I started looking into some of the numbers, and it's true. We are actually getting older and older Olympians. I wouldn't want to overstate it. We're seeing, over the last 30 years, the average age of a female competitor going from about 24 to 26. But it's on the upper end that we're really seeing a lot of movement, especially in competitors in their mid-30s and early 40s. And it's sports science, it's nutrition, and it's just straight up grit. And so what I argue in the column that you picked up is that, she embodies what, really should be a new American kind of Olympic ideal. That is, age and experience can be a competitive advantage. It's not a liability anymore. And we know this from other sports. Sure. I mean, if we just talk about Minnesota, the Timberwolves, I mean, how much do we love, Mike Conley? Mm-hmm. It's the age and experience. And why shouldn't that be something that we embrace and celebrate in our Olympians too?
It's fair to say also, in the case of these games in particular, the U.S. ends up with a record number of gold medals, I believe 12. But there were 4 days where it was getting a little bit scary, other than the speed skater, Jordan Stolz, who I think we talked about is from Wisconsin. Outside of him, there were no gold medals for 4 days. And Alana Myers-Taylor is the one who sort of started the hot stretch as well. And I mean, again, look, there's some sports where this is going to be easier than others, but we are getting, I think, more used to it almost every sport. The idea, if it's an individual who takes care of himself or herself, has some of the advantages that seem to be in place right now, that there's no reason to think that this is going to be anything more than or it's going to be quite a trend as we move forward. You're going to see it happen more and more often, especially around the Olympics.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I think one way to think about it is really widening the pipeline. There's a lot of talk with sort of younger Olympians that we need to go and find, the next speed skater. And speed skating has been really cool. One of the things they did, I think it's over a decade ago, is they said, let's start, traveling down to Arizona and Florida and looking at inline skaters, And that's a source for our pipeline. Luge actually does something with they go around the country. They do it with White Castle. They call it their slider competition or something. But looking for young luge, and skeleton riders, I believe it is, in unexpected places. Well, why shouldn't the pipeline be widened to allow more older athletes in? Because we really do sort of, understandably, I think. I mean, I'm not slagging it necessarily. We do look at young athletes as the norm, and older athletes are kind of, viewed as marvels and rarities, and people like me write, columns about them. But maybe we should be thinking about them differently as this untapped resource who can, bluntly give us more opportunities at gold medals like Alana Myers-Taylor did.
And beyond that, and this is a separate subject, a sidebar, if you will, but from if you buy the notion that for a lot of casual viewers of the Winter Olympics, part of what draws them to the event is learning about the stories of individuals they may never have heard of or rarely knew very much beyond the basics about. And you start getting invested as those stories get told, as those stories get broadcast. And let's be honest, there's a good chance they're going to be richer if they go on an extra 10 years or an extra 15 years, that the saga itself, I think, is something that can attract us as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think we've seen that, another trend I noticed just casually watching the games is a lot of discussion of Olympians who are moms.
Yes.
Which I thought
Yes.
was a really cool narrative. In fact, I did earlier in the games, I did a piece where I spent some time with Team Peterson, the women's curling team, and the two sisters, Tara and Tabitha, are both moms, and they had actually timed their pregnancies and births, so that they could do them together as sisters, but also, it was just really advantageous for how they trained. And, we discussed a bit, I haven't written about this yet, but we discussed a bit, the challenges of overcoming, the physical demands of pregnancy and performing on an elite level. And I think that's the kind of narrative that NBC is very important to the Olympics, making them happen, can really embrace as something that brings these games and engages fans, casual fans, in what's happening on the ice in a sport that a lot of people may not care about, curling and monobob. I care about them, but, if you're just this casual sports fan, why should you care about these? Well, these are people like me.
Adam Minter is our guest, writes great sports stuff and other things as well for Bloomberg.com. Author, has been on with us many times over the years as well. It sounds like you watched a lot. I watched a lot. We talk a lot, or have talked a lot, about the Winter Olympics on this show. I've mentioned, I think I covered 4 back in my newspaper days to go with 3 Summer Olympics, and I think I enjoyed the winter more because of the esoteric nature of some of the sports. If you're doing your deep dive on ranking the top stories out of the just completed Winter Olympics, what's at the top of your list?
I think if I were to really take a look, I think, first of all, it would be sort of a big trend story are these older athletes and the parents who are competing. That's a very new thing. And I think it's something that's going to change how we watch the Olympics and how the Olympics, how we compete against them. If you want to just talk about
individual
story
events,
that mattered.
Right.
Yeah. If you want to talk about a story that mattered, I think, both the USA hockey, both men's and women's, it's hard to top that. And sort of the sidebar story is, I think, unfortunately, how even this event, which, these Olympics, which have always been this unifying experience, has become polarized, and it's becoming another, battlefront in our culture war. And I really, really mourn that. And maybe it's inevitable in the current political environment. But I think that's really a pity. And I think it's going to, inform, events down the line, in particular this spring and summer, the World Cup. And as we start ramping up into LA 28, it's going to also inform how we experience that and maybe how we enjoy it.
Yeah.
As well.
We've talked about that from time to time on this show, and it's not a new subject, although you could say it's newer when it comes to Olympic discussion. And you're right. I think it inevitably means it's something more athletes are going to think about whether they want to or not. They're going to feel like almost that they don't have any choice. And I don't know. I find it pretty exhausting because there were a couple of athletes who spoke up against what was going on here with the ice surge. And they immediately on the right, there was, how dare you? You should be thankful you're representing the country. And I think you can still be thankful you're representing the country and offer. I was not offended by those opinions. I'm also not offended if members of the men's hockey team want to go hang out at the White House or whatever. I don't know. I can, Adam, I can work myself up easily over a lot of stuff, and many have argued stuff that's not worth getting worked up over. But I am just what I hope for is some consistency on it, and what I tend to see and believe is that for the fringes of the two parties, there is no consistency. You're going to hammer it when the person is offering an opinion you disagree with, and you're gonna absolutely praise it if that athlete is offering up the direction that you're looking for, which to me is why I'm just kind of bored with the whole subject, because I don't think consistency has anything to do with the positions a lot of people take.
Right. Well, two kind of reactions to what you just said. First of all, I think what's most distressing to me is that athletes who don't want to speak about politics at this point, that too has become, silence has become
great point.
Politics as well.
A position.
Yeah, and I think that's very frustrating. But I think something else that's really important to consider, and I actually did a column on this early in the Olympics, is, our athletes, the USA athletes are different than athletes in most countries in that they are not government funded. And I don't think this is explained or broadcast enough. The United States does not do it. It hasn't done that in decades. And there were a couple of reasons for that. One is that the members of Congress who made that decision going back as far as the 60s, they didn't want there to be political influence on the selection of athletes or what athletes were expected to do. I reported from China for many, many years, and I actually wrote quite frequently about the Chinese Olympic team. And one of the things that was, a constant with the Chinese Olympic team is that they had to show up and, pose with political leaders, top to bottom. It could be, the local potentate, or it could be Xi Jinping, whoever it is. They didn't have a choice in that, and I think one of the things that's really, that I really like about the U.S. system is, we had members of the U.S. men's Olympic team who decided not to go visit with Trump. And I think that's something that's worth celebrating. And I don't think we celebrate that enough, that we do by design have this kind of non-political U.S. Olympic system. That doesn't mean that these folks don't represent us,
right,
but they don't represent our government. And it's a very important distinction.
It's an important one. And in the case of some, I think there's even some open questions about why some of them who didn't. Some of it may have been, I'm not comfortable in that environment with him. Some of it may have been scheduling issues, whatever the case may be. But it's become another one of those purity tests. And you hit on a really, I think, important part of this is that silence is now considered some sort of concession speech to you're on one team or you're on the other team, when it may be you're just not interested. You have to find other ways to offer up whatever position that you might want to take politically, or maybe not politically at all. It has become, I guess we shouldn't be surprised. And look, I don't think there's any question. There's a prop for forever. Politicians have wanted to pose with athletes for all the obvious reasons. That's not anything new. And so there is some manipulation that goes on there. And then to me, it's up to the athlete to decide. Do I mind being used that way? Is it important enough for me to say, well, I'm looking at it as the presidency, not necessarily this individual? I'm not interested in reading every mind on that, because I think it may be very simple in some cases. It may be more complicated in others, but I think we've reached a point where, as you say, I can't even imagine what the buildup is going to be to the next one, which isn't that far off now in Los Angeles, California.
Right. And, and just following what you said, ultimately it doesn't allow the athletes just to be athletes anymore. They really do have to, have the media training and know how to manage these kinds of questions. It's very much the case that many of the athletes in Milan Cortina did not want to answer these questions. And, I'm not naive. I mean, the whole shut up and play basketball thing, I understand it. But, there has always been, previous to the last few years, it feels like there still was space for, athletes on the U.S. Olympic team in particular, to not get involved in this kind of thing. And I just feel like that space has shrunk. And it's really a pity for all of us, fans and athletes.
Yeah, there's no question about that. We a couple more minutes on this. I want to try to get into one other subject if we can.
Sure.
The Lindsey Vonn story. We talked about it before, she ultimately made her last attempt, and when we already knew, the significance of the injury. In fact, I had to learn, I did not know enough about downhill skiing to understand that it isn't unprecedented for skiers to try to do what she said she was going to do. Now, I don't know if it's common exactly, but I was firmly in the camp of she's an adult, she can make her own decision on it. I'm not going to presume to tell her what she should or shouldn't do. Now, I'll admit, when she comes out later to say, guess what, folks, I came perilously close to losing my leg, then you swallow hard and you go, oh, God, that's a different story. But I guess I still go back to the same position, which is ultimately it's her, A, it's her call, and B, I do think it's what attracts us, a lot of us, to sports, is that these athletes, in that sense, are symbols more than they are flesh and blood, which shouldn't be forgotten. But it's the idea of, man, she's going after it. He's going after it. That's kind of what brings us to sports in the first place, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And let's not overlook, I mean, she was a legitimate contender before the knee injury. And I think that gets glossed over sometimes. I mean, she was in top conditioning, and it kind of circles back to what, we started with here. I mean, if anything, the fact, I think we should be interested in an athlete, who is 41 years old and is willing to take those kinds of risks, injured or not. Doing the Olympic downhill is incredibly dangerous. And the Winter Olympics themselves, more so than the Summer Olympics, I believe, outside of a couple events, maybe like pole vault, are incredibly dangerous. Look at these snowboard events and the freestyle ski events. They're all very dangerous. And so I don't know that Vaughn's risks were any greater than somebody doing, say, the aerial ski event where, you're up, 30, 40 feet in the air. And maybe circling back again, I think what's really interesting about Vaughn, if we step back, is I think she's a model for younger athletes, and, a narrative that says, look what happens if you stick with this, if you take care of your body, if you continue to train, you have the ability to compete later into life, maybe reap some of the financial benefits from it. And so, that's a long way of saying, I think what she did is admirable, and it's her choice, and I think we all benefit from it.
I believe, if my memory is good, and sometimes it does fail me, that you have written some in the past about WNBA negotiations. We've talked probably too little about that on this show lately with a lot of Winter Olympics coverage and other things. Can you update those of us who haven't been paying close enough attention to it? Because it doesn't appear to me that things are going particularly well. Where is that at, and what's your position on how this might play out?
Yeah, so yesterday the league reportedly told the players and the franchises, the teams, that, if there isn't a deal, I believe they said by March 11th, it's March 10th or 11th, don't quote me on that, it's one of those 2 days, that they would have to start making changes to the upcoming schedule. That means everything from training camp to the draft to an expansion draft, because they have 2 franchises coming in. That's probably true. There's a lot of logistics involved in that. That also puts a lot of pressure on the athletes. This has been going on for 16 months, but, you've covered sports for a long time, and as well as anybody does who covers this, these CBA negotiations, they tend to speed up right at the end when things are really, about to cost people money or are already costing people money. And that seems to be what's happening now. We're starting to get more leaks about what the negotiating positions are, but ultimately what needs to be negotiated is what percentage of the revenues the players are going to get. And that seems to be the impasse right now. They're going to get more than they have previously, but both sides are still with their feet in the mud, or whatever you want to say, not willing to move on their position. The players want more, the league wants to give them less, and we'll see where that comes. But the fact that there's been more leaks, there seems to be more meetings, I think bodes well. Whether it means we're going to have a season on time, I don't know, but I imagine we're going to have a season of some kind.
Do you have a position on what the Vikings should do at the quarterback position in 2026? Beyond, obviously, they're bringing McCarthy back, but they've, I think, made it fairly clear behind the scenes that they do want to hedge their bet. They do want an option they view as viable to be a starter. As difficult as that will be to thread the needle, what's your advice to the purple?
Yeah, I mean, you can't just rely on JJ McCarthy as your quarterback at this point. I think you need some kind of competition for him in training camp, and that's not a particularly original insight. But they're going to have to sign somebody at least on a 1-year deal just to see if they can spur him along and hope that future draft picks give them other options.
Any names appeal to you?
Aaron Rodgers, that would be fun. But just to stir things up at the end here. But beyond that, I just don't know. I'll let O'Connell and company figure that one out.
Well, you probably weren't listening, but we did try to stir things up on that very subject at the start of the show because Adam Schefter, in a podcast just within the last 24 hours, lays out again the possibility of Rodgers ending up here. Doesn't say it's a certainty. Says nothing is ever a certainty with Aaron Rodgers, but I did already. So when you say, get people going, I already tried. And it's speaking about polarizing, it's a very polarizing issue because some people feel like that ship has sailed and others say, what the hell? Yeah, at this point, maybe it'd be worth a try. I'll admit I'm rooting for the story because I just think it wouldn't be boring. Whatever happens, it would not in any way, shape, or form be boring at all. But does that mean it would end in, him raising the trophy? That's probably unlikely as well. It's just it's a strange set of circumstances. The Vikings constantly seem to find themselves at the quarterback position.
Absolutely. And, one of the great things about Rodgers is you've been in the column business. There's several columns to be written if he comes here. That's just too good a piece of fodder to let go. Good to catch up, my friend. We appreciate the time, and we will be in touch. All right. Thanks, Dan. Absolutely. Adam Minter writes for Bloomberg.com. I highly recommend his column writing. We like on this show to give you recommendations in the not obvious places all the time. That's why we highly tout and quote liberally from the Wall Street Journal sports section. It's not huge. It's generally not even a whole page in the actual paper. But they've got good stuff, man. They find good angles. And I think Adam Minter is in the same class. He could write very well for that section. As it is, he writes for Bloomberg.com. And sometimes he writes on real world stuff. And a lot of times he does write on sports stuff as well. And I think because he's not in the sports writing and broadcasting culture, it may be easier for him to kind of give a little different view and to see the forest indeed for the trees. Let me get to one quick text responding to what we were talking about earlier with Adam. The president called the skier who spoke out a loser, doesn't publicly congratulate the women who won the gold, and I made a joke about them. People who wanted politics out of sports don't mind the whole men's team involvement. I'm not sure I understand that last sentence. The people who wanted politics out of sports, what does that mean? Don't mind the whole men's team involvement. Is that person saying they don't mind that?
It was the right wingers that said shut up and dribble. Now they're not bothered that the hockey players are hanging out with Trump.
I got you.
That would be my translation.
And here's what I would say. I would say, yeah, I have absolutely no patience with the president calling the skier who spoke out a loser. I don't remember that particular quote, but I'll take the texter at his word. But I also don't find it any more persuasive to hear and read that the hockey players who either stopped in the White House or attended the State of the Union address, they're losers. Sorry. There's people out there who think that you have to sort of take a side on this. We don't have to do anything we don't want to do. I don't. And the notion that there's something courageous in take a stance on this. No, that's the easiest thing in the world to do. Believe me. That's, for me, the most gutless thing to do, especially if you don't believe in it. I tend to want to call out hypocrisy. And so early when this came up, we talked about it. The idea that we've got to excoriate how dare you? You should be thankful you're having the chance to represent the United States. Athlete can speak up, especially if they're asked questions. I don't have any problem with that. I also don't have a problem. Was it Quinnesota? Which brother was it who said, I love America, or I love the United States of America, USA, whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm. I don't think he has to apologize. That doesn't have to be an endorsement of the administration. There's just consistency should matter. You have greater credibility if you bring some consistency to the discussion, and we have, frankly, way too many people who can't see past their own biases. And that's not the water I'm going to swim in. Well, I'm not a very good swimmer, period, to tell you the truth. Top of the hour break. I do want to get to a serious subject when we come back. We've got, at 4:30, a live report from Alec Lewis at the Combine in Indianapolis, Indiana. Kessler at 5:30.